Hey, how's it going? So this is Dylan with Dylan Talks Tone, and I'm coming at you actually from a hotel lobby in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania today. But I wanted to get caught up on a couple of these videos that we've been shooting for our show, complimentary to our radio show on Monday nights on kprlive.com, Dylan Talks Tone. We've been doing a series on guitar setup, okay? And we've got previously we discussed neck relief and some other things. So we want to talk this week. We're gonna talk in this video about nut setup, because that's gonna kind of be your next thing. Now I don't have a guitar here to demo it, but with nut setup it's really difficult to use a guitar to show you anyway. So what we're gonna do is gonna draw you some pictures, and I'm gonna show you exactly what we're talking about. So when it comes to nut setup on a guitar, it's probably one of the most important aspects of the guitar, because as we discussed earlier in earlier episodes, when we talk about the tonal area of the guitar being the most important, like keeping that energy between those 2 points, the nut and the bridge, or the nut and the saddles. A lot of times if you allow that energy to escape, or if that energy turns into a buzz or a hum, then you start to lose that. Okay, you start to lose sustain, you start to get noises that you don't want to get, you start to get funny noises that a lot of times people don't think of tone loss when they think of like harmonic things, but when you have two notes that are trying to do the same thing or opposite things, and they kind of cancel each other out, it can be a tone loss thing too. Okay, so it's just something to remember. So let's go ahead and look at nut construction, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that we can have problems with a nut. So first of all, let's draw kind of the nut in the saddle. So here's the nut, and then let's put the fretboard over here, and here's the first fret. Okay, so, and actually the fret comes down in the neck like that. Okay, so this is our fretboard. Now our string is going to come across and go down to our peg head this way, and then it's going to come straight across this way. So first of all, probably what you're wanting to know is what is our measurement. Okay, so the point between here and here is the nut height. Okay, now the nut height can be determined by your playing style. So that could be like for slide, or somebody that really plays super hard, that could be a little bit higher. Okay, it could be a little bit lower for somebody who has a really soft touch or plays something, more speed players want lower nut height. Another thing that this can affect, okay, is every time we press down on the string, we pull it away from perfect pitch. So the higher that nut is, the further away from perfect pitch we have to pull that string in order to make our frets. Now, if that nut is really high, then on the first 5 or 6 frets, 4 or 5 frets, our chords could sound out of tune, even if the strings are in tune. So we have to really understand that before we set our guitar up, and understand how we're going to play. If we're going to play slide or something, you can have a really high nut and keep it out of knocking on frets and stuff. You can get away with it because you're not pushing down on anything. But once you start pushing down on stuff, you will pull that nut away from perfect pitch, or that string away from perfect pitch, the higher that nut height is. Typically as a baseline, I like to start at 20 thousandths for that distance between the first fret and the top and the bottom of the string. And then depending on the rest of the specs of the guitar, and how good the frets are, and all that sort of stuff, I might like to get it a little lower. I actually like to have I personally set the lower strings, so the E and the A, a little bit higher than the ones that I set the rest of the way, just because of how actual playing dynamics. I play to how it feels and how it's kind of supposed to work. So that's something that I like to do. So now let's talk about this area right here, because this is where that's the height of the string. But this area right here is really important, okay? And so what we're gonna do is let's take that area back out of there, and actually let's take this string out of here. Okay, and then I'm going to show you a couple of wrong ways that this can happen. So here's a couple things that can happen that you can kill tone on your guitar. One is if the string goes way out straight like this, and you've got that nut that's cut kind of down like that, you're going to get a buzz in there. Okay, now let's take that same scenario and let's erase this back out of here again. What if the nut has worn and we have an edge that's worn off on the backside like that? That'll cause a buzz as well, and it'll do another thing. It'll mess with your intonation, because you see we've basically changed, by having this little spot worn out in the nut, we've actually changed the effective length of the string. We've made it longer past the first fret, so that'll mess with your intonation as well. So what do we want when it comes to the design of how the string goes through the nut? Okay, so let's draw another nut, and let's talk about this. So the string, so basically let's put our tuning key over here. So this is where our string comes through, right? We want the angle of the string to follow down to the proper tuning key. Now the thing about it is that it's going to be different for every string. So your low E and your A and your D are going to be a lot more steep. Your high E and your B are going to be a lot more shallow. So it's not going to be the same angle as it comes through the nut for every string. So if you're cutting it properly, it's got to be different for every one. Okay? Now, if that doesn't happen, then that's where we start to lose tone. That's where we start to get noises. That's where it starts to get a little weird. So now, let's talk about the actual shape of the slot in the nut. Okay, so let's draw our nut going across this way, and let's draw a couple shapes here that can happen if we don't do this properly. Okay, so there's that one and there's that one. So let's talk about those. So now we have a V and we put the string in there. There's not very much string contact on the nut itself. Now over here we have good string contact. We have a proper shape, and the thing likes to go through there. And it likes to slide back and forth. If we use a new tremolo and that string needs to slide back and forth in there. And I'm going to show you something, because a lot of people, they really get on me for this because I say differently than normal. Okay, so a lot of people like to say, so let's have that nice round string, and let's have something a little different, okay? Now, these look very similar. However, this string is meant for half the string to stick out the top. Now this one is meant for the string to sit further down into the nut. A lot of people will say that they want that string to sit up on top about halfway out. The problem is that with alternate tunings, lower string tensions, bigger strings, a lot of times they like to pop out. And so people will say, yeah, we don't like to have that string going all the way down in there though, because it grips and it has problems. Here's the thing though, is if you cut it properly, when you have kind of a little bit open more on the top, this is really exaggerated. I can't draw as well as I can do it. There's just as much contact as a normal nut cut. The string's not being gripped all the way around, so it still works, and there's less friction, but it works really well. One of the biggest enemies to the entire thing is going to be friction, especially when we start talking about using tremolos, because that string has to move back and forth in there. And the thing about it is even with a regular guitar with no tremolo, the string still has to move back and forth. When you're bending and doing all your playing dynamics, the string is actually sliding back and forth in there. So if you're having tuning issues, it's not usually the whole guitar. Usually it's one or two strings. Yeah, so start at one string at a time. Go through the guitar from E, A, D, G, B, E, and figure out which one is gripping and giving you tuning issues, and then you can kind of what you can do if you don't have files for this is you can take a piece of string, like the clipping that you take off the end of a new set, and just kind of run it back and forth in the corresponding string slot to give yourself a little bit less friction. If it's really worn, be careful with that though, because you don't want to cut it. You just really want to get some burrs out of there or anything like that. So that's it, man. Nuts are easy, really, but they're very important. And what we want to get from this is the troubleshooting side of it. If you have a grippy nut, you know what to do. If you have a nut that's too low and starts to give you buzzes, you know what kind of height you're going for. And if the nut is cut the wrong shape and it keeps popping out, those are things you want to look for. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing this yourself, because cutting a nut is a very painstaking process, it takes a while, then this might be something that you might want to pay somebody to do if you don't have a lot of experience. Plus, then the files for it are expensive, you know, like $100 a set. So this might be something that you might want to get some help with. I'm not saying you shouldn't try it, because nuts are cheap. They're only $4 or $5. If you bought the files and you bought a few nuts and got good at it, then it's another thing that you could do yourself. But this is a very important part of the tonal area of the guitar, so just know that before you have this as an undertaking. And that's it. My name is Dylan. This has been Dylan Talks Tone, and check us out every Monday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on kprlive.com. We have another video about this on our YouTube channel at Dylan Talks Tone that goes a little bit more in depth as well. We have a couple of videos on them, so search those out on our Dylan Talks Tone channel, and keep up with us on social media between episodes, because you know we are going to have other projects going and stuff we want to show you with little videos and this and that we show on Facebook and we show on Instagram, at Dylan Pickups and Dylan Talks Tone. So check all that stuff out as well. And until then, this has been Dylan Talks Tone, coming at you right now from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I hope you have a great day.